as you mentioned. Moving on to Arsenal, we are going to speak about a deal that's very close in relation to Gabriel's new contract. But of course, it's been very well publicized in the last 12 hours that there's been a lot of rumors about Gyökeres, a lot in Portugal about personal terms being no problem, bids being made, the deal being close. But one thing we spoke about a lot on the terrace in that time was nothing yet from the UK. Quite a bit from South America, quite a lot from Portugal, but nothing from the UK in relation to that. But yesterday, concrete talks with Benjamin Šeško, and according to Plattenberg, they're kind of getting into more of the nitty-gritty around that deal at the moment. Is it fair to say that Šeško is the most likely number 9 target now for Arsenal to land?
Yes, because they've done all the legwork on it, and Šeško wants Arsenal. It really is as simple as that. And sometimes players don't get the end destination. You may remember Mykhailo Mudryk flirted with Arsenal for months and months and months and then went to Chelsea. So it's not as simple as where the player wants to go, he ends up. But if Arsenal agree a deal with Leipzig, regardless of whether other clubs enter the race, I would expect Šeško to say yes to the Arsenal project, because as I said 12 months ago, Šeško made 2 determinations. First, he received pitches from Arsenal, Man United and Chelsea, and he picked Arsenal. Second, did he want to move to Arsenal last summer, or was it better for his pathway to do an extra season at Leipzig? And he decided the latter. So Šeško's been sold on Arsenal for a year. As I revealed in January, Arsenal made an approach to Leipzig to understand if anything was possible mid-season. It wasn't. And now, come summer, so much has been done with Šeško that it's really just about, can they find a way of doing the most economical deal possible with Leipzig? Because if you got that player buy-in, you're in a very strong position. And because Arsenal walked away and respected Leipzig, they've got an excellent club-to-club relationship as well, which I think is very important. Because when you go back and maybe say, we want to do something around the release clause rather than at the release clause, you might actually have that little bit of flexibility. So right now, my understanding, I know we hear reports that it's costing upwards of 90 million English pounds for Šeško. My information is the variable release clause is set more at 80 million euros. And it's up to Arsenal and Leipzig to determine whether it's release clause or nothing. I don't think that will be the case, or whether there is some flexibility around that 80 million euros number. And luckily for Arsenal, Berta has a long-standing relationship with the Red Bull Group, and he will now lead on negotiations. So it does look like Arsenal are advancing on Šeško. It doesn't mean they're not doing the same with Viktor Gyökeres, because rarely do you put your eggs all in one basket. Yeah. But it would be absolutely no surprise, because of Arsenal's long-standing interest, if Arsenal ended up signing Šeško. And if they bid, because he becomes their target, as I said before, I would term Arsenal not just favourites, but strong, strong favourites, because Šeško has been sold on the Arsenal project for over a year.
Makes a lot of sense. We have a super chat here that's in relation to this that says, hi, Ben. Any truth about Mikel Arteta and Berta being at loggerheads? I'm asking because what I understand by reliable journalists is that Šeško is the first choice. It's because it's a collective decision. So there is a lot of debate, and we put a poll out last night just to see what people were thinking. And there are a lot of people that think Arsenal should be getting Gyökeres, he's the better striker, and that Arteta is essentially controlling these situations, and Berta is being sort of pushed aside, and Arteta's got all this power that he maybe shouldn't have. Is your understanding that this is more about Arteta getting what he wants, or is the signing of Šeško also backed by Berta? He rates him and sees him as an important part of their team and structure.
I mean, my understanding is exactly the opposite. Berta's not being pushed aside by anyone. Anyone that knows Berta will know he is pretty aggressive in a good way behind closed doors. He's no nonsense. And Berta's job description says win now. When Arteta came in, it was about building a project. And Arteta and Edu were very much aligned, as were Arteta and Jason Atu. But Berta's been brought in to shake things up. He's got full autonomy and control. If Berta wants to sign Viktor Gyökeres, then it's Mikel Arteta that will be pushed back, not the other way around. And the move for Berta is in many ways about taking a little bit of autonomy away from any manager, and building a model that is collaborative. And in collaborative models, you want that loggerhead dynamic. So I think fans wrongly assume that disagreement means conflict, and actually freedom to challenge and debate and argument is exactly what creates an effective model. Otherwise, if they all just agree, then there's no scrutiny on anything and you don't get the best possible targets. So if Mikel Arteta and Andrea Berta were not in a room arguing until they were blue in the face, but in a respectful and constructive way about these targets, then they wouldn't be doing their job. But
Agreed.
Berta is there to take the final decision. So if everyone at Arsenal wants Šeško and Berta listens to them and says, no, I'm going for Gyökeres, then he will have that autonomy, not the other way around. Mikel Arteta doesn't have a veto or any kind of control in a singular sense over transfers. It's collaborative. It feeds up to Berta. Berta will go to the ownership. Budget obviously will be factored in, but that's not an issue for Arsenal this window. They'll make their final decision. So I think it's being wrongly billed at the moment as Arteta wants Šeško, Berta wants Gyökeres. If they get Šeško, Arteta wins, and it shows that Berta's got no authority or control. Absolutely the opposite. Berta is the kind of character that will stick to his position and guns. So if they end up getting Šeško, it's because Berta has been persuaded that all this legwork and all this history around Šeško is right for Arsenal. If he says no, let's abandon ship, and Gyökeres is better, then again, he will have the power and the control and the autonomy to do this. So my understanding is he is the final decision maker. And actually that debate or argument, as it's sometimes billed, is extremely healthy. If you don't have it, you simply don't have a functional recruitment model.
I totally agree with the need for that. D King here says, why can't we even get 2 strikers like Liverpool's bench in 24-25? Look, I think you can, but I think all of these teams can buy 2 strikers. But where you have to be mindful is if you just think about the players that are on the tips of everybody's tongues, Gyökeres, Ekitike, Isaks, Šeškos, Delap as well. These guys all see themselves as the main number 9. You could have 2 strikers, but you've got to create a situation like at Newcastle, where Callum Wilson is happy to be the understudy to Isak to a certain degree. It's very difficult for any of these big clubs, including Man City, Real Madrid, if they're using 1 striker to go and get a Gyökeres and an Ekitike, and then to say to Ekitike, you're going to be on the bench and you've got to wait for your chance. A lot of players won't go for that because they see themselves as a starting player. So it's not as simple as just buy 2 strikers, any 2 strikers. You have to get that balance right as well, you know?
Yeah, and we had this conversation with Chelsea, if you want to listen back. And I think that context is key because sometimes fans, even journalists, we're a little bit superficial in the sense we look at who's available and what the fee is and if collective business would benefit a team. And then when you add up all that info, you say, absolutely, just bite the bullet on 2 strikers or bring in these 2 players in different positions. But the player's always going to be looking at who they're competing with for spots. And if there's more than 1 person in that spot and they want to play regularly, they're going to be reticent. And if you take the prices away or the stats away and you just look at the profiles and their potential and how long they might stay at a club if they're a young player, and you say, because Chelsea is the best example, I know we're talking Arsenal, but let's just give the Chelsea example. If you say Nicholas Jackson, still relatively young, has got into double figures in Premier League seasons. If you say Delap, double figures for Ipswich, high ceiling. If you say Ekitike, incredible numbers for Frankfurt, line all 3 up. And I don't think you can tell who Enzo Maresca would start. So then if you're the second name in alongside Jackson, you back yourself because the pitch is probably, we need a number 9. If you're the third name in, Jackson stays and Delap arrives and you're Ekitike just for the sake of the argument, you're immediately thinking, even if the fee suggests I'm the starter, even if they're telling me I'm going to be the lead guy, there's always a chance that a week into the season, Maresca goes, Delap's trained brilliantly, or Jackson knows this system better than anyone else. They come into the side. And when you're a goal scorer, if you score goals, you're likely to stay in the side. And that's what's kind of interesting, because if you're a fullback, we've seen it with Liverpool, a player might be dropped like Andy Robertson, but he'll soon come back into the side. Trent might be dropped for Connor Bradley. I know he's leaving now, but earlier in the season, he comes back in the side. So you think, okay. But if you're the world's best striker and you get benched for a game and another of the strikers I've mentioned scores a hat-trick, the likelihood is they're going to start the next game. And if they keep scoring and scoring and scoring, you feel, uh-oh, I'm too far down the pecking order. So most of these top players will want that guarantee they're the number one. And that will be a challenge for Chelsea. If Jackson stays, who Maresca likes, and Delap comes in, anyone they pitch to now of the bigger names is going to be asking that question. Am I going to be starting every week? And Chelsea are going to be asking that question internally as well. And that's why I think it's a little bit premature to be assuming right now that Chelsea are definitively going to go off and add another big money striker.